Sidebar with former Bexar County DA Nico Jorge, now trial lawyer, managing partner of Jorge Norton Law Group, and Georgia Rougeau scholar, former chemist, and pharmaceutical researcher and director. Please join us during the show right now or after the show by going to sidebartv.com, sidebartv.com, and that's where you can select a platform of your choice to watch the show live. So I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys.
I know.
Here you are.
I've been missing in action.
Better?
Yeah, my daughters are home for the Easter weekend, so I'm really happy about that. And I've just been pulled in many directions, and I feel like you guys have been kind of the same way.
Yeah, you know, well, I think before we jump into the topics, I know we're going to talk about the NYPD funeral and the different responses from President Trump and President Biden, and the Mexican president threatening the United States, and the CO2 emergency. Those are all the topics I'm sure that we'll navigate through. But I don't think we can. I think we need to comment on what this weekend means to the Christian faith.
Please.
I mean, this is this Resurrection Weekend. I mean, people call it Easter. George and I have discussed where Easter came from and the bunny, and what the hell does the bunny have to do with Easter and this and that, and what does that mean towards the Christians celebrating resurrection. I'm not going to bore you with all those details right now. We don't have the time. But yesterday Christians around the world celebrated Good Friday. Where historically a first century Jew that went by the name Yeshua, we call Jesus in translation, was brutally murdered by Romans. I mean, that's a fact. That's a historical fact. Even atheist scholars will tell you that. People have to contend with that we're still talking about that dude. I mean, he did some amazing things, made some crazy claims, and seemed to back him up, because there's an empty grave, which we will celebrate tomorrow, an empty tomb that offers people that are broken and lost and sinful the gift of salvation that we didn't earn. That's what happened this weekend and what we're celebrating on the cross. And it changes lives when people understand it, truly understand it, not just told to memorize things or taught to memorize things, and then when asked, why do you believe it, I don't know. Which unfortunately is what most people, I used to be that way growing up. I went to Catholic schools all my life, and I couldn't tell you why I believed in the resurrection and what it meant theologically, historically, and practically, because there's answers to all of that, by the way. And so, it was a celebration yesterday, and it's weird that you say you guys are celebrating someone being brutally murdered. Well, yeah, because if you understood what it meant and the messianic prophecies leading up to it, and understanding the thousands of years of history leading to the life and death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that first century Jew, and what it means to eternity for us, but then also what it means right now if we submit to that and truly believe in our heart and profess with our mouth that Christ is Lord and was raised from the grave. I mean, Romans 10:9, things change in your mind, and it doesn't mean you turn into some little kumbaya flower. I mean, you can be real and raw, but still love Jesus. Like, I think that's where I fall. But so it's significant. I mean, it's significant. Yesterday was significant. It was interesting to celebrate and see people. And I hope, not a lot of churches do a Good Friday service. Ours doesn't right now. I think they're going to in the future. I'm good friends with Ed Newton, and I went to CBC, and our pastor's Pastor Dave Tooker. But I'm good friends with Ed, and he did a wonderful job celebrating Good Friday and what it meant historically and Holy Week, from Palm Sunday to Good Friday. It was just wonderful. Did a wonderful job in the celebration. But we were celebrating God stepping into humanity, dealing with a bunch of our crap, and being treated like crap, and being nailed on a cross naked and unrecognizable. I mean, it's a historical fact. I mean, there's scholars that have studied the crucifixion of that first century Jew and what he went through. And you think, why? If it's all a lie, right? I mean, that's what the naysayer and the atheist will say. But it's not. That's why. And then you have people that truly believed it and saw a resurrected Christ and acted like they saw a resurrected Christ because they allowed themselves to be crucified and martyred. And so there's a lot to talk about there. But I'm just saying, I just think we just need to acknowledge it. I mean, this is the most significant celebration in the Christian faith. We are not mandated to celebrate Christmas. I think most people know that Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. And George and I have talked about that on R-Rated. But it's a wonderful celebration. But this is a more significant celebration than that. So that's all. I just wanted to throw it in there. I mean, we talked about it a little bit.
It's the most significant event.
Yeah.
We celebrate it. We should. But it's the most significant event. And that's straight out of Paul's letter to the Corinthians. He so much as said, all of this is a waste of time.
Corinthians 15.
Every word we've written, exactly right, is a waste of time. And none of it matters if the resurrection of Christ didn't happen. And so I love it. I love it. It's a fantastic time to recognize that, as Nico said, that Christ stepped into human history. So it's a historical event, and it's a reminder that we serve a rational God. Yeah, and we serve a God who stepped into history, and it can be historically verifiable.
Yep.
And that is an immediate departure, right, from the rest of the world's religions, which really look at the universe as a kind of mystical experience, but not Christianity. Christianity, we talk about historical Christianity, the resurrection of Jesus Christ as a historical event. That's mind-blowing to people. They don't think about it in those terms. But
And there's more evidence. I mean, I look at evidence for a living. There's more evidence to support that than people think. They think, oh, it's just your faith. Why do you believe in that? Because I just believe. Well, that's fine, and that's great that you just believe. But there's objective evidence, and that's not for the show today. George and I have addressed that on R-Rated, and we'll do it again.
Sure.
But I mean, it's really mind-blowing when people really understand the objective evidence to support the claim of a resurrected first-century Jew. So that's all. I mean, significant. It's life-changing. I studied. I mean, when I was coming to Christ, I studied murder scenes for a living. I studied the murder scene of Jesus Christ, and it had just an everlasting, an effect on my life. And it changed everything for me. So that's it. I think we'll get back into your topics.
It makes me think, though, that with Americans pulling away from Christianity, pulling away from any type of God, that's a fact. But I also hear Christians and non-Christians the same when we talk about the subjects that we're going to talk about, say, how could God let all of this bad stuff be happening
Karen,
to us?
That's 2 shows right there. Well, if God is so good, why does he let bad things happen?
How many times have I heard that?
People?
Zillions.
Yeah. That's a great question, and there's some great answers to it. But I mean, obviously, it's way too long. I mean, they'll take up the whole show, literally.
I know.
But I think it is significant that people are pulling away from the Christian God, because I mean, people believe in a God. It's small g. And different ones. Many times it's ourselves, because we want to make up our own rules. That's the ultimate issue. When you really think about what's the objection to the Christian God, it's because you can't live the way you were living. I mean, there should be transformative behavior, because you have a renewed mind. Romans 12:2 said we have a renewed mind, and so if there's a renewed mind, there should be renewed behavior and renewed living. And we don't want to. I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to do whatever the hell I wanted to do, and I built up a pretty good resume of screwing my life up before, and that doesn't mean that when you become a Christian, everything's great. I mean, no, there's more stuff coming probably, because when you stand for Christ, you're going to be hated by the world. Scripture talks about that. John 15. I mean, Jesus talks about that. He talks about in this world you will have trouble. John 16:33. But have heart. I mean, have hope. I've overcome the world. James 1:2-4 talks about it. Romans 5 does as well. I mean, so I love that our faith addresses, I call them it storms. I won't put the first part in there. It's, crap storms. I love that our faith talks about, look, you're going to go through some stuff. But I've gone through it as well, and that's what the whole idea of the resurrection is too, that Jesus doesn't say, do as I say. He says, do as I did. He lived a life we couldn't live. He died the death that we deserve eternally, for our sins and for breaking a perfect law. And he offers us a free gift of salvation if we accept it. And if we accept it, then we should start living a little differently. You can't just accept it and say, no big deal, I'm going to do what I want to do anyway. Then you probably really didn't accept it. So this week, that's what this weekend means to me and to Christians, I hope, around the world. But it's a big deal. And so we celebrate it, and we treat it as a big deal in our family.
Well, even taking away Easter from the situation, when you think about the beginnings of this country, they were based on,
Judeo-Christian ideology.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so getting away from that is so apparent these days.
And that's a fact. I mean, scholars way above my pay grade have talked about this over and over. George talks about it a lot. I mean, we just can't. You don't have to like it, but don't recreate history. I mean, it is what it is, and it's not what it's not. I mean, our founding fathers, the signers of the Declaration. I mean, the strong men of faith, and you can even look at the Judeo-Christian ideology. Merged into our Declaration, into the constitutional ideas, into the separation of powers in Isaiah 33. I mean, there's just a lot there where you can look at biblical principles. Doesn't mean you have to evangelize to people. Doesn't mean you have to accept Christ as your Savior. But some set of ideas had to set up our civic government. And our founding fathers knew about Islam. They knew about Hinduism and Buddhism. And they knew about, agnosticism. And they said, look, these Judeo-Christian ideas are the best form of ideas that will set this structure into motion. And because they wanted free people, they needed educated people and they needed righteous people. So you have to have some set of rules and guardrails to kind of set up that mindset. So if you make up your own rules, you're going to have anarchy. We have history to tell us that. Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Hitler. These are atheistic societies, and people could become dependent, not valuable, and you can do whatever you want with them. They don't see the imago Dei in people, and they don't treat people the way God would want you to. So, again, that's a whole show in itself. I'm sorry, I didn't mean this to go on this rabbit trail, Karen, but I mean, I just thought it was significant for us to acknowledge what this weekend and what yesterday and this weekend means to the Christian world. And that's it. We talk about every other worldview, and we can't talk about the Christian worldview, right?
But notice what he said there at the end that I think, what you said, Nico, there at the end that I think ties into the topics that are about to follow, and that really all the topics that we talk about here on Sidebar from the prism of the value of human beings as human beings become less exceptional, and that view of human beings finds its way into the culture and into government policy, things go very badly in nations. And so we always come back to how this nation was founded, because those principles of value in human beings, because we're in fact created by a creator, and we have value because that creator has assigned value to us, because we're image bearers, we're made in his image. We mediate his presence on earth. And so our value is intrinsic. Can't be taken away by government, because it wasn't given by government.
Right.
And so when we look at policy, like we're about to look at, and we look at the impact it's having on society, we always come back to that. There's been a shift in how we look at human beings, and we're paying the price every day.
Okay, that's it. The show's over. No, I really wish
too much
we
crap
could.
to talk about.
I know. The lies, the bad stuff, the evil people. We got to talk about that next, right?
People.
We will be right back with more on Sidebar. WOAI. Thank God you guys are here every Saturday.
I'm glad nobody can hear us on break.
Put me back on the right track. You know what? One of the stories that we all wanted to talk about today, I don't know enough about it, and that is the NYPD funeral. And Trump and Biden were both in New York at the same time that this was happening. Trump was representative at the memorial or the funeral, and Biden was there for like a $50 million a plate ticket to raise funds. And some were wondering, wait a second, what's going on here?
Yeah, so you have two suspects, suspicious car, suspicious behavior, whatever, in a car, and two officers approached them, and the officer that was deceased that ended up passing approached the passenger side. The passenger side he had a weapon. There was another weapon in the car. God bless you, Dom. And so and he's commanding him to get out, take your hands, let me see your hands. And he doesn't respond to his commands from what I've read. I mean, again, I haven't looked at the official, but you guys can correct me if you read something differently, please. And he starts to get out of the vehicle. See, this is and I'm not being critical. I'm talking about this assault on the institution of law enforcement. Law enforcement officers are afraid to respond. In a normal season in support of law enforcement, an officer would have drawn his weapon. When you don't respond to an officer that you know has a uniform and a gun, and they're asking you to do a lawful command, let me see your hands. That's a lawful command, and it's a tactical and a safety for everyone involved, by the way. You want to talk about why people get shot without guns? And I'm not saying that each case is individual, but just because someone gets shot without a weapon, it doesn't mean that the officer committed a crime. And people have a hard time understanding that. The reasonable belief of apparent danger, not imminent, apparent, and is it imminent? And not actual, meaning apparent. And so this person is being commanded, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. Doesn't, gets out of the weapon. Well, then action beats reaction. He ends up pulling a gun and shooting the officer. Just terrible. Underneath his bulletproof vest, right under in his abdomen area. And he ends up passing away. Well, I think that's, once again, another example of a reflection that officers are afraid to respond. You think he wanted to pull his gun in New York with Braggs as the DA? You think he wanted to even think of pulling his gun? So he puts himself in harm's way, and in consequence, so the rest of the society and the community, and then he loses his life. He's got a young child. And now, where are the riots? Where are the movements and the marches and all this stuff going on for when an officer gets murdered like this? Look, I hold officers accountable for a living. Even when I was district attorney, we had a law enforcement integrity unit. If an officer did something wrong, we investigated or was accused of it. We investigated swiftly. We worked with our investigators. If they didn't do anything wrong, then we supported them. Then we exonerate them, get back to work. You got to feed your family. And if they did, we held them accountable. Kind of a simple concept to me. Maybe not easy in application, simple in theory. And so we were on a truth-finding mission. We're not on a truth-finding mission anymore. The institution of law enforcement here, ready for it, it's good. It is good. There are individual officers, I've dealt with a lot of them, that are bad or that abuse their authority. I got that. Those should be held accountable. There's some bad lawyers, there's bad doctors, there's bad everything. But we want to impugn the whole profession because of this BS movement out there that has this stupid idea that when you test it, you see that defunding the police and not supporting the institution of law enforcement is idiotic. It is stupid-ass idea. It just end the conversation because we have data that backs that up. But you have officers that are afraid to respond appropriately. You don't think he's thinking, well, I'm either going to die by the DA and in prison somewhere, or I'm going to subject myself. I guess I'll just wait and see what happens. And now we know what happens. But there's no outrage. No outrage when an officer an innocent officer is murdered. And that's exactly what happened here. And there's more of this than gets airway, by the way. And then so that's that there's we can go down a whole trail about talking about not supporting the institution of law enforcement and have a practical evaluation of officers that are great, good, and then are bad. And there's all of those there, by the way. But to support the institution. But now we see the response of people. You have President Biden out there hobnobbing it with people that he probably doesn't even know are in the audience. And then you have two schlubs with him as well, Obama and Clinton. And because they're falling for it. I don't call them schlubs just because they're Democrats, by the way. I'm saying they're schlubs because they're falling for the false ideology and these crappy ideas that are destroying this country. If Trump was at that fundraiser, I'd call him a schlub too, by the way. How about that? To be fair, I'm an equal opportunity offender because it's the ideas that I can't stand. The people, I don't know them. It's the ideas that I can't stand. These ideas suck. Can we just please just look with rational mindset about the border, about law enforcement, about the lack of order, about what we're doing with fossil fuels. We'll talk about that too today. About what is our stance internationally? People are countries are laughing at us, and we're going to talk about the president of Mexico with big huevos because he knows he can't have them because we have a weak president that doesn't have any. And that's a direct correlation. How the president of Mexico is openly on 60 Minutes threatening our country with illegal immigration. You think he would have done that with Trump? Same president when Trump was there. Oh, sorry. We'll get back. So you see the response, George and Karen, of two people. And to me, whether you like President Trump or not, and there's some things that irritate the living crap out of me about the guy, and there's some things that I truly like and admire about him. I'm calling balls and strikes. But on this issue, he seems to have a deep affinity, a genuine affinity for law enforcement. He seems to. And tell me whether it's because of his time in New York and what he thought of law enforcement there. I'm fascinated by it, and for the military, by the way. But he seems to have a genuine affinity for law enforcement and the military, and I think this was reflected in him going to the funeral. And it's a consistent affinity. It has always been that way. Yeah. And it isn't moderated depending on focus groups. Mm-hmm. And he actually, while Biden was at the fundraiser, where was Trump? He was at the funeral. That's right. He was at the wake and for the officer, and he was a welcome presence as opposed to Kathy Hochul. I thought that was really interesting. You had two different politicians or sets of politicians, and the reaction to those politicians by people at the wake were very, very different.
Kathy Hochul shows up, and she is, according to reporting, I think the New York Post has reported that she was summarily asked to leave, that her presence was not welcome. And rumor is it, I mean, the Post is standing behind the story that somebody said, get her the hell out of here, or get her out of here. She was not welcome there, and I guess she wasn't there very long to begin with, maybe 10, 15 minutes, but she apparently got into kind of an animated discussion with Jonathan Diller, who's the officer who was killed, that she got in kind of an animated discussion with the officer's widow. And so you just got to kind of step back and say, well, okay, what was Biden going to do? Was Biden going to go to the wake? And his response might have, or the response to Biden's attendance might have even been less enthusiastic than for Hochul, because what he's doing on a federal level is really rather synonymous to what Hochul has done at the state level. And what exactly have these politicians done? And this is why people are responding the way that they did, Nico, that's because these politicians are standing by while laws are passed that are easy on violent crime and violent criminals. And that's really the issue, because they seem to lack a personal responsibility. They seem to lack the ability to connect the decisions that they make at the policy level with the consequences on the street. And then they seem to be totally tone deaf. They either don't care, or they just assume that eventually the dumb ones among us will realize how brilliant they were. And this is typical of this kind of thinking. Marxist, communist. This is what we have. I try to get away from the Democrat label, because I don't think that represents where these individuals are coming from in the Democrat Party. This is communistic. It's Marxist in nature. You need an almost infinite fuel source of chaos at the center of that ideology. And the creation of crime is a welcome thing.
I wondered that myself.
Well, I know the answer. George is going to give it to us.
This is welcomed. This is what we need to understand.
But tell them why.
And people, I think, are finally resonating that. I think people sense, wait a minute, can you guys possibly be this stupid that you would, in fact, have no cash bail? We're just picking out one officer here. This is a trend in New York. It's out of control. And so people are standing back and saying, could you guys possibly be this stupid? Or is it in fact that this is deliberate? And I would argue the latter. This is an ideology. It's a worldview about changing culture by creating and allowing enough chaos to ensue that people will be so desperate for a solution that the government then steps into that vacuum.
Yes, that's it.
It becomes the solution, basically. Not really.
You see that, Karen?
It's not a solution.
I know, but how
it's
can
a
they
pretext.
do that?
Because it doesn't affect you yet. Go ahead, George.
Yes.
Finish your thought.
Them stepping in to save the world is a pretext for a kind of top-down control over the population. That's really what's going to happen. You people basically turn it on us. They say, you people created this mess, so now we need to step in here and fix the mess. And how do we fix the mess? Well, we'll basically wipe out any kind of individual liberties you have. We'll basically take away your choices to make individual decisions for your life. That's what's happening here. People are finally getting it, I think. And you could hear the disdain from the wake at Kathy Hochul. But it's worse than that. There's one other quote that was said, that was stated that week that I thought really captures this. But I want to shut up for a moment while you guys weigh in. Go ahead, please.
No, I want to hear what the quote was.
Oh, yeah. I pulled up because I wanted to just see what the responses were to this event. And there's a quote that was put out by Sergeants Benevolent Association President Vincent Valalong. And I thought this was, the way he wrote it, it doesn't get any more direct than this, but I think it captures the sentiment. And it's both true and sad. He sends a letter to the members of the New York City Council and telling them, don't bother. You guys stay the hell home. How about that? You're not going to be welcomed here. With a warning that they not attend. He said that they were morally responsible for Diller's death.
Yeah.
Adding that their presence would be, and here's the language, would be a stain on the memory of a true hero who made the ultimate sacrifice. The attendance of politicians who are supposed to be doing the bidding of the people, right? New York Council people, the New York State Governor,
Eric Adams,
right? Joe Biden. People get it. These people are in a pot of apathy. They simply don't give a crap. They are unable, again, Nico, and I'll say this and I'll shut up, to attach the decisions that they're making to the consequences on the street. And real people are living and dying every day.
Check out the hubris and the arrogance of these SOBs. The governor and Letitia James asked if they could speak at the funeral. Talk about being just out of it and not understanding how stupid and irresponsible and inconsiderate that your request is. You know, their set of ideas that they're implementing collectively from the mayor, and he has selective, you know, amnesia, I guess, or whatever. He has selective moments of clarity, but overall, he's part of the problem too. From the mayor to the DA, I mean, these people have the audacity to show up to these things. It really is. I mean, like, they're just so disconnected to what their actions are, and that's why the government that they asked to speak. This is insane. But here's the thing. But New York, wake the hell up. Why do you keep sending these people? You keep voting for these idiots. They're just what you get. What you I mean, it's seed time and harvest, right? You sow bad seed, you're going to get crappy harvest. This is the harvest you get, and the same here with San Antonio or anything else. People complain. We have a crappy, weak DA. We have elected officials that have the same ideology.
You're so right.
I mean, people criticize city council all the time. Just look at their policies. Just go, hey, what set of ideas are you trying to advocate forward? Are you in this progressive woke situation? You more conservative? You more libertarian? We want to label ideas and just take the labels off. Look at the idea. Look at the implementation. Look at the evidence that supports or you know, contradicts the idea that's being implemented, and then vote the person in or out. I mean, we have got to educate ourselves and get away from these labels and this tribalistic mindset, because that's what's happening in New York. People just were taught to hate Donald Trump, hate Republicans. Well, Giuliani did a hell of a job there, whether you like him now or not. I mean, people remember and revere the work he did when New York was in another crap hole, and Giuliani just had to. Now, you have to be careful not to overcorrect, and I've warned against that. I mean, we talked about that a couple of weeks on the show. But balance, logic, critical thinking, courage, and compassion all together.
Instead of the chaos that we see
100%.
right now,
Okay.
which is deliberate.
We got to take a break. We will be right back with more on Sidebar.
This is the long break.
Live during the show, and of course after the show, sidebartv.com. The things that are happening every single day, you say to yourself, nothing more evil can happen than this. Nothing more can, America can't be more embarrassed than we are today, and then something else happens. The chaos that we are living in today, it seems never ending.
Well, there's still opposition in the country. The vast majority of the country doesn't buy into this nonsense. We still have a political party with its imperfections, the Republican Party, that provides opposition legislatively and otherwise. At the Capitol, we still have politicians, conservative politicians, who don't buy in. So there are modes of resistance, and there are pockets of resistance in the country, and those are very real. And we pray that they prevail in the 2024 election, that we see a new day. So, but I'm worried that things are going to get worse, because the inertia, the momentum is clearly on the other side. I mean, you just look, we talk about it in here all the time. I don't think we talk about it enough. This is institutional. It's virtually every major corporation and every major bureaucracy and every major institution is gutted by this ideology. And they have policies and they have measures for running their organizations that reflect this ideology. This is why people step back right now, Nico, and say, what's the point? I mean, it's everywhere. And so I think this is also part of the strategy. You fatigue people into inaction. They just look around and they say, it's overwhelming. What's the point? Why do we even do anything? Why even? What does it matter?
I really hate it when I hear people say that, though.
Well, that's true.
I hate that.
It is, but it is reality. And so we need to just remember that that's when we actually need to be more mobilized. We need to be more motivated. We need to be more informed. We need to shut up even less, because our speech,
I'm so glad you said
our
that,
informed
George.
speech is a true weapon. It's the weapon of rhetoric. But don't just make noise. Bring information.
Man, George, home run. You're exactly right. Engage in conversations. Do it respectfully. Do it courageously. Do it informatively. And we have to do it. The time to be quiet and to go along, to get along, is over. I mean, if you're just tired of this, I mean, I've talked to people, and I love to see videos go around where people said, look, I didn't vote for Trump in 16. I didn't vote for him in 20. Yeah. But I'm voting for him in 24. And it has nothing to do with whether I like him or not like him. It's just, I can't stand this. You know what I mean? When the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing, we change, right? That holds true. Oh, pain is a good motivator. I pray that we're in enough pain to where the country, this is not a pro-Trump deal. It's just Trump happens to be the man for the time. Period. End of story. I mean, it doesn't have to be, oh, you're just a MAGA. Yeah, I am a MAGA person. Make America great. You're not a MAGA. You just have a different definition of what that looks like. That's all it is. Don't we all want America to be great? But how do we get there? That's the discussion we're in right now. But the big picture concept of wanting to make America great, I think both sides, quote unquote, theoretically want. They have a very different way of getting there, and what the because definitions matter.
Exactly.
What is good and bad and moral and immoral and evil and all those definitions matter. And I think we're seeing the implementation of different definitions, and we're seeing the effects of that, the consequence of that, from our kids to DEI to the border. And so let's talk about the president of Mexico.
That's really, man, that's very well said, and that's really as simple as you can make it and as accurate as you can be. It's not simplistic; it's simple, but that's the way you position it. Two very different ideologies here. We've never been this divided as a nation, Nico, because we've never had such diametrically opposed visions of what America ought to look like. America was founded to be a nation whose government is instituted among men and whose authority is given by the voter.
By the consent of the people.
By the consent of the government. And what we have here is a direct reversal of the American experiment, where it's not citizens anymore, it's subjects. And the government gets to decide what's best for us. And by the way, and it's not an aside because it's central to the concerns of people all across the country, this is the objective to having no border whatsoever. Biden and his minions can't rationally argue that it makes sense to have a nanny state control your every decision. What normal human being? Yes, they exist. There's tens of millions of people who vote Democrat, who I think have lost their ability to think rationally, who are okay with the government controlling everything they do, probably down to their bowel movements. I get it. But the majority, the overwhelming majority of people want to make their own decisions.
Right.
They want to decide how to run their households. They want to decide how to raise their kids. They think that that's a pretty good idea. America was founded on those sort of rudimentary viewpoints of reality and culture and society. And there's a war on that. And what better way to bring in the opposite of the American experiment than to simply dilute the electorate? You can't win the argument rationally, so just delete them. And you delete them by bringing in basically the population of more than 30 states. Right? What is it, Nico? It's 9.4 million that we know about. Plus another 2 million got away. So 11.4 million, I think, according to the latest numbers. That's more than the population of 43 states. That's more than the population of 150 countries. It's more than the population of every single individual U.S. city, including New York. And I'll tell you what, it's insane, but man, it's brilliant. But Biden and his administration takes on the victim mentality. We can't do anything about it. The Republicans won't let us do anything about it. Hold on. You can't create this utter crap storm, and then now you want to make it better, and because your better is still bad, then and the Republicans are trying to stop you for that. You want to blame the Republicans? Think about the mental and the strategic, the mental jujitsu they're using. I mean, I would describe it a different way, and I'll do it after the show. I'll describe it differently. But think about that. They make it horrible. They want to make it better, but they're making it better is still horrible, still bad.
But that's just one
But why does
topic.
it work? Why does it work? Gas. I just saw somebody. Who was it? Man, your comments are moving so quick. I can't keep up. Was it who's using the term gaslighting? Carlos Austin Danger. I like that name. Carlos Danger. I like it. I'm jealous. George Danger. It's kind of nice ring to it.
Very nice.
The only reason we are divided is because the media divides us by gaslighting. By gaslighting the left. I think it's.
I don't understand what gaslighting means.
Gaslighting
It just means pretending.
Instigating? Is that what gaslighting means? Instigating?
No, it's a modern term. It's a modern term for propagandizing. It's a war on the obvious. Hey, Nico, your eyes are seeing what you're seeing, but your eyes are lying to you.
So
here's
propaganda.
The reality.
Propaganda. It's another way to say propaganda.
Exactly right. And so, why is it possible? Why is it effective? It's effective, and I mean no insult, but it's just true, because people are increasingly more stupid. And they're increasingly more stupid because they can't be bothered with learning. They're stuck to these damn things.
Well, but they're stupid, maybe more ignorant, but they're also more fearful.
Well,
because they're seeing that there's a consequence to this. I mean, you have a guy in the New York subway, former military Marine, and then this guy's nuts. People were terrified of him. He's threatening people. He puts them in a hold, thinking he's not trying. No one said, "Hey, you're gonna kill him. You're gonna kill him." They were like, "Good, don't let go." I mean, they were afraid of him, and he happened to. It's a horrible consequence. That wasn't his intent, though, when we talk about mens rea. And because the guy who was truly the one violent and the one threatening other people, because he ended up, unfortunately, passing away, now this dude is being prosecuted. Why do you think it happened with Diller? He didn't want to react a certain way. This is because there's consequence. Right. Look at the Catholic leader with his son when they're on the opposite side of an abortion clinic. Not even on the side, not blocking the damn door. Praying for people. Then some nut job comes and yells in his kid's face. He says, "Don't talk to my kid that way." He's 11 or 12. Then I would have knocked his ass out. Forget about shoving him. Local authorities say, "Hey, man, we're not going to prosecute this. Are you insane? This was a defensive third person. That was his son. This guy came across the street." And then the local DA, who thinks on the left, said, "I'm not prosecuting this guy." Then the feds come in and prosecute him. I mean, so there's consequences to people. Speaking out. That's why people. So it's not just ignorance, but it's fear. It's both. That's all I wanted to say.
True enough. And gaslighting says that they're not really violent criminals. It's the citizen that defended himself that is at odds with normalcy. And so it's a reversal of reality.
Got it.
On the very day, I think that this happened with Jonathan Diller, that Jonathan Diller was killed by 24-year-old. What's the guy's name? Is it Guy Rivera?
He goes by the word name Killa. I think that's his nickname.
That's nice. Yeah.
K-I-L-L-A.
That's subtle. So Eric Adams
says, by the way, the other guy, he had the equivalent of a shank up his ass. You think about walking around with a shank up his ass. Now they do that in prison, but you never know when I was going to get picked up, and he always wanted to have a weapon with him. So a lot of people don't check that far when they're put them into custody. Think about this is the mindset because they had been released over and over and over again. Go ahead, George. Sorry.
Right. So you have latest reports that say that violent crime is down in New York. Citizens are looking around and saying, who's tabulating these numbers? Are they deaf and dumb? Are you kidding me? This is becoming more and more normal. Eric Adams himself said, I think on the day of the wake, he said, this is a reminder that there are good guys and bad guys, and these are very violent bad guys. He's right. He's talking about Rivera. And he makes that statement, and then you step back and you say, but what do you support? What policies do you support? Are you schizophrenic? Because he'll say what he says, and then he'll stand by and support policies that do absolutely nothing to curtail violent crime. Because Eric Adams is a religious left-wing dude.
I want to know where the White Lives Matters movement comes in. Because the last time I checked, Rivera is Mexicano or some type of Hispanic, and then Diller was Caucasian. So, but you can't say white lives matter. I'll say it. All lives matter to Christ. That's why this weekend means so much to me in the resurrection weekend, why I wanted to open the show with it. This is my point. And you can't say stuff like that. We've lost our effing minds in this country. And this is where people have got to educate themselves and speak up. We've got to speak up. And the ultimate speak up is in the voting box. And encourage and persuade with passion, appropriate passion, but information and logic and reason to persuade people to just course correct. We've got to course correct. Look, President Trump says a lot of things. Some of it's wacky, a lot of it's good. But he says we're in a country in decline. That we are in a country in decline, and you can put lipstick on a pig all you want, it's still a pig. And that's what's happening. This country is still in decline. So you can use it, whatever that term is, gaslight. You can use propaganda. You can call something for what it is when it's not. And if people are ignorant enough to believe it, then that we get the result we get. But this country is in decline, and we need a big course correct.
I was going to say, Eric Adams finished his quote by saying that the levels of criminal recidivism in New York are through the roof, and we got to do something about that. Okay, well, maybe you ought to stop doing what you're doing. If there's no accountability, you're going to have more and more of this behavior.
We got to take a break. We will be right back with more on Sidebar.
In like a little Mexican ninja.
Wow.
Hello.
With 45.
You're Lebanese, right?
Half Lebanese, half Mexican.
Part of my ignorance, because I don't know where that is, but you're not Latino. Are you
what do you
Latino?
mean?
Is Lebanese Latino?
No.
Eh?
It's Middle Eastern.
It's half Latino.
Middle Eastern.
Yeah, so
But you're half
Lebanese.
Latino because of your mom.
My mom
right.
Indiola, my pop Lahud, and then my mom's Mexican, yes, and my pop's Lebanese.
Sorry, I was thinking about that today. I don't know why. But
Wow,
anyway.
you were thinking about my Lebanese side today?
I was like, is he Latino? People see him are like, is that a Latino guy? Half Latino.
Half. Well, I guess so. I'm not a true Latino now. There you are.
No,
You're
you're
racist.
not
Latino card
You're
is
racist. You're racist. I can make Middle Eastern jokes and Mexican jokes, and it's okay because I'm half and half, right?
Can you make a joke about Mexico's president?
That's not a joke. That's dangerous.
No, very dangerous.
That's laughable because the guy is bullying a weak president on our side. Think about this. So the president of Mexico goes on to, was it 60 Minutes?
Yeah.
And says the illegal immigration is not going to stay. And they give him a ransom. And that's $20 million is invested.
No,
Get
the
the hell
question
out of
is,
here.
what's your plan for stemming illegal immigration? What are you going to do to stop it? And he basically throws out what really is kind of extortion.
Exactly.
Of demands.
Not
like
kind of
mafia.
extortion. It is extortion. I mean, what did he give? Three or four brilliant ideas. He says, look, the U.S., if the U.S. can commit $20 billion a year to third world countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, then we're on board because they really need your help. Like, we haven't given enough billions of dollars to those countries.
Well, they see in Ukraine and say, why not ask for it?
Right. And we're just supposed to pretend that those monies aren't mysteriously lost every single time and that nothing actually gets done. So we need $20 billion, not once, but per year, number one. Number two, he says you need to lift sanctions on Venezuela because Venezuela is a thriving democracy, right? It's not like its leader, Nicolas Maduro, is a communistic, and I really, Kurt, can you bleep me out? All right, I'll just have to exercise some self-control. Who crushes his people. It's like $1,000 for an egg, maybe a roll of toilet paper. Yeah, things are going really well, but let's lift sanctions. That's brilliant. And what was the last one?
Ending
the Cuban embargo. Right, because the Castro brothers are also committed to democracy in Cuba, right? I mean, and what was the last one?
Legalizing millions
Let's legalize
illegal
mass
aliens.
amnesty. And by the way, he is actually in sync with Biden because Biden is actually thinking about that. He really is. And there we go again. You can't persuade people, so you delete them by basically giving millions and millions of illegal aliens
you have the same
immediate citizenship.
You have the same dude acting differently with two different presidents. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
That tells you he has zero respect for this guy.
Yeah.
The Mexican president is acting like the bully in the schoolyard, and he knows he can take the school.
Elderly abuse.
I'll
call it elderly abuse.
Well,
he's abusing Biden.
Well, maybe. But what I'm saying is Biden is weak. This is what happens when people know they can pick on you and they can take your lunch. He didn't even come close to acting like that with Trump.
I think that's why they canceled Trevor Noah. You see, he was doing the late night show, and then there's several clips rolling around there. He says this: as much as whatever you think about Trump, all these things wouldn't have happened under Trump. It wouldn't. He says other leaders are not taking Biden's call. And I think right after that, they're like, you know what, Trevor, you're not good for the
but Trevor was a left progressive dude.
Completely.
But for him to, I would support him in saying that because it's the truth. Yeah. It's the truth. It doesn't matter where the truth comes from. The truth is the truth, as we say. And so I'm good for him for saying that. I don't know what happened to him, but I'm glad he said it because it was true. Bill Maher says it, but he can't be canceled, right? Even though Bill Maher gets crazy. He criticizes the left, criticizes the progressives, goes all bananas, but I still will never vote for Trump, and I'm going to do everything I can to get him out of. So you're going to try to re-empower all the stuff you criticize. That's good. I mean, I wish I had 30 minutes with Bill. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is
so
stupid.
dumb.
Yeah, that's asinine.
He
That's
loves his
self-inflicting pain.
stances more than the truth.
Say that again.
He loves his stances more than the truth. So he says, this is what I believe. He loves it. And he'll stick with it no matter if the truth is different.
Yeah.
Because when we had that interview with Patrick David, Patrick David was convincing him. You can tell in his face, but he'll he buckles and he says, no. He does this emotional thing all the time. But no. You righties or whatever, He loves his stances.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, but I mean, people need to. He tends to intimidate people on his show, and it's a captive audience. So I just don't know that his show really encourages, forthright dissent. If he really created an environment where you could go back and forth with him,
I don't know about that, George. I mean, he's got different platforms when he's got his real time with Bill Maher, and then he's got his weed smoking session when he gets. That's what Patrick Bet David was on.
Apart from the interaction with Ramaswamy, I haven't seen someone get very far with challenging him with facts.
Candace and Patrick David.
Patrick Bet. Well, that was an interesting one. I watched most of it, but he has a lot of respect for Candace, and he knows he can't toil with her. She's a good debater.
But the other thing in his show, not the weed smoking one, if you notice, when he invites these right-wingers, as he calls them, people applaud them.
I know.
Before people want to do anything, but now people are supporting these, about the police and immigration. Just hear them, and people are with the right people.
Well, we don't have time to talk about it on the radio, but we can talk about it after. Even that guy, I didn't know who that guy was. Hughes Cole. He was on The View, and he put Sunny, what's her face in, that miserable woman. She's so
Sunny
miserable. Austin. She just, I just can't believe the crap that comes out of her mouth. But he and this guy is no bastion for conservatism. What's his name? Coleman Hughes or Cole Hughes or whatever his name is. I sent you the video, but he responded very calmly, calculated, and then the crowd actually clapped and applauded him.
He said something like that, right?
Yeah, it's not about my skin.
It's not about the skin. You're making it about the skin. It's not about the skin.
Yeah.
And everybody started applauding him. That was interesting.
I think people are tired of it, man. That's why more people need to.
It's amazing how much they can learn when they're not screaming at the sky.
Well, that's my point. But if one person speaks up, it gives encouragement to the other. Now, we don't need a bunch of idiots speaking up and then just giving fodder to the other side. Like, well, that's exactly what we thought of you guys. We need people that are calculated, that are logical, that can critically think, and they can articulate the positions well, and you show passion when it's appropriate, but make it when it's appropriate. And so that's why, Patrick Bet-David, I think, has been an important voice. Candace in the past and still currently has been an important voice. And that's why I don't like to see when there's conflict on this.
And maybe it encourages you or discourages you, but I think something is happening because Instagram, last week or 2 weeks ago, changed their guidelines. Now they auto-disable political content on your phone unless you enable it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they're like,
you have to allow it.
They're probably saying, you know
Right.
what? These people are going to start receiving truth, so let's disable that.
Right.
And let them go in, if you're smart enough to go in.
Well, how many times have we been canceled on Instagram?
Yeah, completely.
We've been
Slow down.
R-rated Christianity, Sidebar. We've been canceled on Instagram.
Have you noticed that your account in particular, you put a lot of other things, and it gets good traction? But suddenly,
you put political stuff,
Yeah.
or Christian
and
stuff.
you're like,
yeah.
what the heck?
It's true. And if I do a comment on something else or I do a post, it's not is not overtly either conservative or political or Christian. It'll get different traction, about your kids, about
totally.
your birthday or something like that. But you put something and all of a sudden it doesn't get traction. It's like, interesting. Maybe do that many people not like that, but they like these?
Yeah, that's
Maybe,
why a lot of
possibly.
people, just so you know, there's a lot of people right now, what they're doing, they're putting asterisk and, like, for example, they're going to talk about, let's say, porn, they put a 0 instead of something else, and then they change letters around because they know that the algorithm's checking words and checking phrases.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's outside my pay grade.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you got the Mexican president who's acting like a mafia boss, threatening Biden, and Biden will probably cave to it. No, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you got the other mafia boss, Trump, over here, where they're telling him to go piss on yourself, and he won't put up with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, because this border, Biden acts like it cannot be fixed, and it is a humanitarian crisis for us, even for the illegals coming over, but call it what it is, and as if we can't stop it. So if they all had bazookas, machine guns, high capacity long rifles and tanks, we wouldn't be able to stop them either. I mean, think about the logic. So that's why I applaud Governor Abbott and why it's important for him to have people in the legislature. Why, again, I'm going to say it, but why I'm glad, I feel blessed that the citizens of 121 saw the truth and voted my brother in. Now Mark still has an election in November. We're not going to can't let our guard down.
Nope.
I mean, you still, even though that's been historically a Republican seat, I said, Mark, you earn the trust of the Democrat voters as well. You keep working it, which he's going to anyway. He didn't need it from me. But you keep working towards that, and you want to be a representative of all District 121. And we need more of that. And I think Mark shows reason. He shows unwavering, dedication to the ideas that the people sent him in to support. But yet he's going to sit down and still listen to people in a reason. He's been in a lot of meetings lately in Houston and Austin and this, and I just said, go in with wisdom. I'm there. He asked me a lot of questions and we counseled together, and I think he's going to serve 121 and ultimately Texas very well. We need more of that.
On this issue and other issues that are important to conservatives, maybe we'll actually see conservative bills see some daylight in the House, in the Texas House.
Well, something we need to think about too. Go ahead, finish your thought, George.
I was going to say the 60 Minutes interview was on CBS, and then CBS did some further reporting on it. And I pulled up, broken clocks right twice a day. Here's CBS, quote, "The White House witnessed López Obrador's power in December." This is an interesting take. After a record 250,000, quote-unquote, migrants overwhelmed the U.S. southern border, President Biden called López Obrador and asked Mexico to help contain the flow of migrants. A month later, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol reported the number of migrant crossings dropped by 50%. With the ear of the White House, López Obrador proposed this fix to address the root causes of migration issues. So think about that. We're getting overwhelmed in December. The Biden administration calls Obrador with the tail between their legs and asks them, would you please help curtail the number of migrants crossing over? And within a month, those crossings were halved. And so now during the interview, he says, look, if you want me to continue helping, here's what you got to do. Unfreaking believable, man.
Well, you know what's unfreaking believable? Is this true? I mean, I know we want to talk about the CO2 cult crisis. That's not a crisis, but they're going to use it. We'll talk about that on the after show if we need to. But did Biden really make Easter Sunday Transgender Day? Is that true?
It's a transgender visibility.
That's
day.
what he did?
And I don't know that it was Biden that did that. There have been activist groups that have been calling for that. and politicians that have supported it. But I don't know that Biden himself has done it. Not that it would surprise me, but I don't think there's been any communication from the White House.
But think about that on that day. Think about the strategy and what that's really. You're talking about two competing ideologies.
Excellent point. And Salu just brought that up before the break, or while we were at break. And I said, Pete, this is a reminder, and it's not so subtle a reminder that what we have is two different religions clashing, two different sets of pieties that are clashing. And it's a reminder of that. And they're telling us that. This isn't just a political movement. We'll die for this. It's basically what they're saying. It's that important to us. This is religious in nature.
It is.
And it has all the makings of the religion, not unlike the climate change ruse.
I mean, think about where that goes. I mean, that's gone to women being cheated out of scholarships, out of opportunities, out of awards that
out of their very identity as women.
Out of their identity as women. I mean, actually, biological males have been called and voted Women of the Year. I mean, we've lost our minds. I mean, a biological male with all the stuff that comes along with males.
Patently absurd.
I mean, it's absolutely absurd. We're going to talk about the CO2 climate crisis and other topics after the show. So please join us for another 30, 45 minutes if you can get on to Facebook Live or what else we got, Dom? YouTube, Twitter,
YouTube, yes.
all that other stuff, Karen. Thank you, guys. But regardless of your faith, wish you a very blessed Easter and Resurrection weekend, depending on how you celebrate it. Just enjoy your families and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
The proceeding-
Favorite 80s band, George?
Say again?
Favorite 80s band?
The Outfield.
Really?
Oh, my goodness. What song do you remember?
Play Deep was released in 1985, and Say It Isn't So is the first song. The second song on that album is Your Love. And that song took the nation by the nuts. Hang
No
on.
Hall & Oates?
Hold on.
No, Hall & Oates.
That's mine.
No, I mean,
Hall and Oates.
Hall & Oates are a staple. I mean, they're everywhere. You can't. Yeah. All right.
Man.
Well, I wish we could talk 80s, but
Oh, 80s is the best.
yeah.
It's
I miss the optimism of the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
there
it
was
was.
just a general optimism.
And the music.
I miss Don Rickles.
there were
Yeah.
plenty of.
That
Yeah.
would not even exist in this
Don
world.
Rickles would have never made
I have
it.
to say,
Nope.
the older I get, the more I think every day about those times.
Yeah.
You know, because it's weird. I feel like I was, totally different. It literally was a totally different planet.
It was a different
totally
planet,
different
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And it's like, you feel like you're having did I have an out of body experience? It's kind of weird. And I'm like, I can't believe this number's coming out of my mouth, but I mean, I turned 55 in November, and I'm like, okay, 55, but I mean, I feel like it's not 200 years, but it feels like it was 200 years ago.
It really does.
Right?
It
Karen?
does,
It's just-
yeah.
And it's just like, it's
Like
amazing how quickly a
Completely
culture
different
can
world.
change.
Completely.
Yeah.
How quickly a culture can change.
Guys,
if we're asleep at the wheel.
question to you guys. For example, I struggle with this back in the 80s, let's say. Everything was cleaner, and I'll use that word, right, But you would try to say, I got to be careful with what I see, with what I listen, and on TV you can't say certain words, right? Whatever. It was very clean, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, I expect cleanliness out of the TV, the media, right? Back then.
Right.
But now, for the sake of freedom of speech, you're like, let anybody say anything, because we're defending freedom of speech now more
Yeah.
than we were defending cleanliness back then. Does it make sense?
No, not to me. Well, I want to make sure I understand your
But-
point, because I'm a big freedom of speech guy. You know that. So
You understand how could I explain to your friend Nico?
No, say it again. I understand
but
the
because,
basis.
for example,
concept of
excuse
your
me.
plate.
Sorry, I'm the oddball out.
I'm the oddball out
understand?
too.
You're not Mexican.
No, I don't
You're not
understand.
Mexican enough. No.
I don't understand.
It's my Lebanese side.
It's getting in the way. No, I'm joking.
You're
No, 'cause
racist.
I'm saying in the 80s, you would watch TV. You
Yeah.
couldn't say the word stupid for example,
Or
right?
suck was
Or
one of
suck
the
or
horrible
stupid.
words you couldn't
Standards of
say.
Oh
decency.
yeah.
So back in the
Decency
day,
standards.
your
It's
mind,
the Jeffersons, man.
your mind was geared to say, you know what? I don't allow, either from a Christian or from an American point of view, I don't allow these types of words, this type of images on TV. I don't want that because that's not clean or that's not, pure or whatever, right? And we fought for that. But now even us are fighting for freedom of speech. I want anybody to say anything. And I'm like, what the heck?
I think it always should have been freedom of speech. I see what you're saying now, but because our standards seem to have shifted when it's convenient. But I've always been a free speech guy. I mean, I'm almost a free speech absolutist. I understand that there's some parameters that need to be in place there, but yeah, I've never been a guy that thought that slang words. You know how I am, brother.
Yeah.
I talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
And why I really think so many Christians are.
But
just
you would have protected your kids from not hearing those words.
Well, yeah,
That's why
but I'm also going to protect my kids from not seeing people have sex either. When people say, "Do you talk to your child?" I remember one guy that I was debating on this because I think I was speaking to a halfway house or to a group of tough dudes, and I said "fuck" or whatever. I used the F word a number of times, and I was like, I just don't appreciate this. And I was like, okay, well, you don't have to appreciate it. I mean, it's just an expression. It's hyperbole. And we only say freak, I guess. I mean, you want to be that goofy? And then he says, well, would you talk in front of your kids that way? I go, did you really say that? He says, yeah. I don't make love to my wife in front of my kids either, you idiot. I mean, I said it just like that. And I said, is that your point too? Be open to your kids? I mean, no, of course. There's some. That's why we have ratings on movies. We used to G, PG, PG-13, R, X, double X, triple X, whatever the hell it is. Why? Because there's different ratings. So kids. Now, my 15-year-old, I don't hold back. I talk the way I talk in front of her. I mean, I still tone it down a little bit, but
But you're considerate.
Yes, but I'm considerate of information that they take in also. So I'm considerate of the expression. This is just an expression. We get so goofy. You know me. I never use GD. Can't stand it. I mean, it literally makes me cringe. And also, or if someone even just says "God bless," I don't like that either. Say "God bless you." I think it's flippantly using God's name. So but whether I say freak or you're out of your freaking mind, you're out of your mind, oh, you're full of it versus you're full of it. I mean, really, we're that goofy?
But
look, one of them is appropriate, one of them's not, depending on your setting.
I have to say, though, the
about it.
first time that I heard Trump use the F word or
Yeah.
BS, I laughed out loud because I thought to myself, that he wasn't just using it to use it. He was using it because he was being himself.
He was on the edge, yeah. He was something like,
And
But
when
he was expressing something
Exactly.
in an emphatic way. So just like in England, they say, "Oh, you're out of your bloody mind." If I walked
bloody
around,
wanker.
if I'm on the radio, Kurt wouldn't even block me out if I said
Right.
they're out of their bloody mind. But in a different culture, you want to talk about what a culture, a social construct is? Cussing. That's a social construct. You know, this, and where's the camera? This in some countries means F you.
Yeah.
This means F you. This means F you. This means F you.
Right.
This means F you.
Cut that
this
down.
means F you. But if you do this, then all of a sudden we know what it means in our culture.
But if you go like this, it's stronger.
Well,
You put the hand
exactly.
in there, it's like, hey.
Or my uncle used to do this,
Right?
like he's gonna stick it up your ass.
But check this out. Look at levels. This level and this level.
No, but all I'm saying is let's get to the heart of what we're talking about. Those are just expressions. Fine. One's more appropriate, one's not. I think what was interesting is people bitched for years that politicians are fake. We're getting a bunch of fake ass politicians. And then when
then
they
they get a
started
real
acting
one.
more real,
Yeah, I know.
then it's like, oh, I can't believe you. You need to be
too
more
real.
presidential. Which one do you want? Do you want, you tired of the fake ass politicians? Or what does presidential mean? Now, do you want someone poised? Do you want someone always on? Look at Milei in Argentina.
Yeah.
Carajo, carajo, get out of here. You know, afuera. I mean, he's all cussing like crazy. But he's doing great for his country.
Yeah.
And
Wait,
who's
you
the
weren't-
guy in El Salvador? Bukele? Bukele? I mean, now he's more poised, but he's bold.
Christian, yeah.
Yeah, but
Bold
that guy is
Christian.
bold.
Yeah.
I mean, and he is for a while there was no murders in 400 plus days.
Yeah.
El Salvador?
Wow.
I mean, that guy's
Capital
no
of
nonsense.
Africa.
He went after. I mean, look, he
got reelected by 87%.
Yeah, he went out, but he
So
went,
ones that voted against him were criminals. Those
They-
the ones that were
Right.
still out.
constitutional limits aren't there. He actually went after.
right.
He went after, after this
That's what you
political
have to be
dissidents.
careful, right? You have to be careful.
Where are
But
you
I
not
mean-
a freedom of speech absolutist? Where are
Well,
you not? Give
okay,
me an
well,
example.
let's say
I
two
am.
people.
You are?
I am.
You are.
I am.
So how did you feel? Okay,
well, let me give you the example
Yeah,
first.
give me an example.
So if I tell George to murder Karen, I shouldn't be held accountable? It's free speech. And he does it? That's what I'm saying. That's why I say almost.
Except if I'm
am.
a Democrat, I'll blow off context and I'll say Nico actually in some
Ask
setting.
me too.
Right.
But
So
that's
at some
still
point-
speech, is what I'm saying.
But that's speech. So my point is, you gotta. I was just gonna insert the qualifier of context.
Well, that's why I say almost.
So how did you feel about Candace Owens?
That's all I was.
That they got rid of her because of what she was saying.
Why did they get rid of her? I didn't never
Well,
hear that.
they haven't said why they got rid of her, but one of the conversations because in the argument with
We don't know all the
Nobody-
reasons
no.
why, but I think the issue, and I'm saying this, I'm trying to figure out how Karen's going to bring us back to climate change. But with Candace Owens, what I took issue greatly with Candace Owens, and I would toss that up to just her ignorance. It had to have been ignorance. I can't imagine it being anything else. The fact that you had college students that are protesting on college campuses across the country, and they're advocating for genocidal policy led by Hamas. That they're actually saying that that's okay, that that's an acceptable thing to do. And so in response to that, you had corporations and including law firms who says, there's no way we're going to hire these pricks. I don't want these people anywhere near my company. And so Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens got into a back and forth. And Megyn Kelly saying, hey, that's appropriate. These are the consequences of your actions. You said what you said, what you're allowed to say.
Yeah.
But there are consequences for that.
That's right.
That's fine. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences for it. I should be saying I should be able to say whatever the hell I want to say without government reprisal.
Gotcha.
Now, there can be, Nico may not like what I say, and he may have an issue with that. That's a consequence. I should be thinking about that if I'm trying to preserve our friendship, right?
Yeah.
So those kinds of things. But that's different than government reprisal. The First Amendment protects free speech, the use of speech, the exercise of speech against government reprisal. It's not talking about your neighbor. It's talking about the government. So that's a separate issue, Salo. We should just distinguish between those two. It's not a First Amendment issue if it doesn't involve the government. But in the issue of Candace Owens, I just got to step back and say, hey, are you kidding me? She's saying, no, there shouldn't be consequences like that. It's free speech. No, it doesn't work that way. The consequences are appropriate. Somebody's saying that is a genocidal prick who is dangerous, and I don't want him anywhere near my company. It'll be a human resources nightmare. So I wouldn't hire a person for saying what they said and advocating what they're advocating.
Got it.
I mean, if they can't look at October 7th and see what the hell is going on, And if they think that's Hamas, the Hamas is the hero.
So they should say,
something like that.
I'm not against free speech. I'm against the consequences of you over misusing your free speech. Is that correct?
Well, no, I think that we ought to be very careful when we talk about free speech and free speech protections to understand what the First Amendment is actually saying and what it's not saying.
Gotcha.
It's specifically saying that speech is protected against government reprisal. It doesn't mean that there can't be societal consequences in society for saying things. And in fact, I think there should be. But that's different than big nanny government coming in and saying they don't like what you're saying because it doesn't line up with their narrative.
That's pretty cool because
That's the issue
That's
for
awesome
me.
what you say, because I think a lot of people need to dissect those nuances and all
Yeah,
that
but the
stuff.
classic example.
In
but
that
the
sense,
classic.
Nico, I'm a free speech.
Well, I know, but that classic example is if you yell fire in a movie theater,
totally.
and then people get trampled. Well, that's just free speech. It's too bad for them for believing it. Well, no, I mean, so that's why I say I'm almost a free speech. I mean, but I deal with the justice system, and I deal with speech and conspiracy and RICO laws and people law of parties and things like that.
And in one of Will Smith's songs, he talks about that because he never cursed in any of his songs, only on one. But he said, yes, I have the freedom to do it, and I have the ability to do it, but you never stop to think if you should.
Will
should
Smith.
do it.
So Will Smith didn't want to cuss because of whatever moral standard, but yet his wife is banging his son's friends.
Nuances. There's a lot of nuances.
Yeah, a lot of nuances. You see my point? I mean, that's someone that doesn't understand what the real battlefield is.
they were making
But I
it
didn't
up.
say fuck, but my wife's doing it with my son's friend. Okay, and I can cry on TV. Will Smith is an embarrassment to manhood.
Well,
but
FYI,
that's
Bad
another-
Boys 4 is coming out. So anyway.
He's an idiot. I wouldn't watch it. He's an idiot. So climate control. Speaking of
But
gas.
what does it mean to
Climate
declare
control?
climate emergency?
Whatever.
What does
CO2
that
climate-
mean?
Yeah.
It really is a very, very big deal. And we were just chatting, the three of us here during one of the breaks, that it's our inclination to believe that this is something that's going to be declared in the near future. And it's very, very dangerous and very concerning under the pretext of climate crisis, and which is really quite a fake problem. A climate emergency is something that could be invoked by the President of the United States under the National Emergencies Act, and it would basically suspend any kind of restraint that he would have on curtailing civil liberties. That's a fact.
But what is the
and so it would be
emergency?
invoked, and it would then be expanded because it's always
So
expanded.
two
What was the
Democratic
emergency?
senators or whatever they were saying that, our forests are getting this way. We're having water is getting lower. Water lines are getting lower. Snow is melting. I mean, we don't have the same. I mean, they're saying that there's effect on the climate. The problem is these impractical and illogical answers that they want implemented. I read an article, and George is our local expert on this, has like a 0.18% reduction of whatever climate. I mean, it's not even effective. So it's one thing to say that whether there really is a climate issue or
That's
there's
important.
a crisis. That's
Right.
one thing.
That's
But
important.
then what's the solution? And is the solution practical? And is the solution, look at COVID, worse than the problem? I mean, so you have COVID. There's a problem. We never said that COVID virus wasn't real. We just said it wasn't real dangerous to most people. That was it. And so then the solution comes in where kids are separated online. Kids are stupider than ever, more ignorant than ever. And then suicide rates, drug abuse rates. I mean, just all kinds of social skills are down, and depression and medication is up.
Yeah.
All these things. And so we have to think, okay, what was the net gain from that? So now you take that same type of, for me at least, analysis on this. And it's like, number one, is there really a climate crisis? Really one? And is it man-made? Two subparts to that for
True
me.
enough, yes.
And then over here is what's the solution if number one is true. So if one, then B. If A, then B. But is A really legit?
And we've skipped over that. We're not even asking. Notice how Nico positioned that. If you start with that,
Yeah.
is this actually true? And if you look at it, the body of geniuses, and I say that very lightly, on climate change is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a UN
Never
entity.
mind.
Now, here's what's
Never
interesting.
mind.
The IPCC is charged and funded to investigate man-made climate change. So they've skipped over your first question because it doesn't matter. They've
right.
already concluded that anthropogenic causes
are what we ought to be looking at. Those
English, please.
anthropogenic
Light
causes
bulbs.
are simply the idea of tying environmental impact to human-related activity.
Got it.
And so they're concluding, this whole panel, by the way, many of them aren't even scientists. They're bureaucrats, many of them numbnuts, but they're government hacks who have already concluded that it's a problem. And you guys, I'm telling you, the numbers around this are just absolutely staggering. There's a climate policy initiative. It's a nonprofit advisory group that researches and advises on issues of economics as it pertains to climate change. In fiscal year 2011 and 2012, the number was around $364 billion per year that were being spent on global climate change initiatives. In 2019, I'm going to say 2019, 2020, that number had changed or had grown to about $653 billion per year. In 2021 and 2022, the number is now, hold on to something, 1.3 trillion per year. So we are in the multiple trillions of dollars of what's being spent globally to fix a fake ass problem. And it's pervasive. This is a well-coordinated effort. And it's at the center, Nico, is an engine of fear, just like COVID. Yeah. It's amazing what you can get away with when you scare people shitless. And that's where we are. This is a
what's
fake
the end game,
problem.
Well, again, for that,
The end game is control. And you can see it. It's well coordinated. So go over to policy. Let's go to policy for a quick moment. I want you to weigh in on it. Because Hillary Clinton in 2016 campaigned in part on the notion that she was going to declare a climate emergency in 2016. Thank God she lost. So we had 4 years of sanity under Trump. And you remember the Paris agreements?
Yep.
And how the media was up in arms
Yeah.
over the fact that he declined to include the United States under the Paris Agreement.
But you know what?
Now,
Tell the people why. Because what about
it's bullshit.
Egypt? No, but they didn't include the real. Egypt
they
and
don't.
China don't give two shits about it.
That's exactly right.
No, everybody's tiptoeing around Egypt and China.
And
they
they're the
get to
ones-
say they get to do whatever the hell they want,
Yep.
and it all falls on us. And Trump's like, wait a minute, bullshit. I mean, he said it wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. I mean,
So China has announced that they're going to be building about 300 dirty coal burning plants over the next few years.
Yeah.
Crickets from the administration. But remember, this is an existential threat to the existence of humanity, right? Crickets from the United States. Crickets from Antonio Guterres, the head of the United Nations, that communist prick. Okay, yes, he's Portuguese, but want nothing to do with that. So,
All
so
Portuguese are bad.
crickets against the,
hey, made fun of Lebanese people.
you know,
Right under him.
trying to construct an English
Go ahead.
So crickets from those. So the real actors, right? The real proponents and the people who are really supporting policy and running nations into the ground as it pertains to the release of greenhouse gas emissions. Let's not go after those people. Let's go after the United States. So Trump is sitting back. You know, I mean, you can say whatever you want about Trump, but he's thinking, okay, all right, what's the objective? Well, the objective is to decrease greenhouse emissions, right?
Yeah.
Greenhouse gas emissions. So Trump is saying, what's our objective per the Paris Accords? And they're saying, well, we need you to reduce it by 17%. But if you look at the records over the last 20 years, the United States has already decreased it by 22%. So we're sitting back saying, well, what the hell do we need the Paris Accords for? We're doing a great job on
Without
our own.
that pressure.
And that's really the issue.
Yeah.
No one is doing more, ironically, than the United States in terms of lowering our carbon footprint, right? Now we got to step back and go to your other issue. Is this really an issue? Yes, climate change exists because it's existed since
the
time
key.
immemorial.
Yeah. What about the ice age? I mean, this is my point. I mean, climate's always going to change.
Exactly.
So
100%.
that's the first fallacy. So you got to start with an assumption. The assumption is this: if you're in graduate school where you go to be extra stupid, and I say this even having 2 master's degrees, so maybe you shouldn't listen to what I'm about to say. The assumption is that there hasn't been significant climate change on planet Earth prior to the advent of oil and gas and coal, which would have been circa 1850, right in the middle of the Industrial Revolution. That is fallacious. We have had dramatic, in some cases catastrophic climate shifts on planet Earth from forever. I mean, you can look at ice ages, you can look at interglacial periods, you can look at the Roman and medieval warming periods. There have been droughts. There have been floods. There have been dust bowls. This stuff has been going on forever, long before fossil fuels. All right, that's an inconvenient truth that they won't engage with. That's the first thing that they won't engage with. Fallacious assumption. Number two is that carbon dioxide is somehow the culprit because it's a chief greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide, you got to go after carbon dioxide because the more carbon dioxide you increase, it creates a kind of blanket over the earth and basically trapping hot air. And so the earth is getting inexorably warmer, and therefore we're seeing extreme weather conditions as a result. And we got to get rid of carbon dioxide because that's our chief culprit. Lots of shitty science there, because not only is that untrue, but we desperately need carbon dioxide. Desperately need carbon dioxide. Do you guys remember from basic high school science?
No,
Carbon dioxide is a primary reactant in photosynthesis. And what is photosynthesis? The process by which plants make food. And so the very dipshits who are bitching about the fact that we're cutting down trees and deforesting because we hate Mother Earth are also saying that we need to decrease carbon dioxide, which is the primary engine by which you bring back forestation, because it's really the best plant fertilizing means out there. We desperately need carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a wonderful thing. And so there's a lot of erroneous assumptions at the heart of this.
And then
only
the false narrative gets all the attention. That's the problem. Right. If a lie, think about this concept. And I say this often, if a lie goes unchecked, it becomes the truth. Because you have nothing
truly.
It does. Because you don't have anything to replace that deception and that lie with. And that happens to our kids. We're seeing that with our youth. We're seeing that with people that hate America. We're seeing that with all the different traditions that we've had in this country that have been replaced by this other cultish mindset of this progressive left Marxist ideology, whether it's with climate, whether it's transgenderism, whether it's with all this other stuff. It's really a distortion of truth and a distortion of God's creation for us all, or just common sense, by the way.
And I like
you said at the beginning, you were talking about how whatever it is that we're doing, it's not working. Remember you said that? And that's absolutely true. The irony of this is that real science will show that it's not carbon dioxide. It's not an increase in carbon dioxide that's leading to a commensurate or greater increase in the Earth's atmospheric temperature. It's actually our response to carbon dioxide that's leading to these things. It's the measures that we're taking that are less and less effective.
But I think the bitching on our side is, why don't they hold China?
That's what I was just going to say. Even if it were true, how can America stopping it solve the entire global problem?
Because it absolutely has nothing to do with the truth. This has all. If you go to the World Economic Forum, which has made in their they met in January 15th and 19th of this year, and they made climate change measures, and then they put a piece out in March that said, here's 5 things that the world's economies can do to rein in climate change. And every single one of them, in addition to being built on climate hysteria, you can read the hysteria in the paper. It's all fear-based. But every single one of them has to do with top-down control of populations. And if you step back and you think about the main argument of going after carbon dioxide, talk about shitty chemistry here. If you go after carbon dioxide, who do you ultimately go after? You go after human beings. Why? Because we're carbon dioxide producing machines. This is what we do. When you breathe out, you produce carbon dioxide. And it's truly a tough gas to break down, true enough. But you desperately need it, right? Because as you emit carbon dioxide, plants eat that stuff and then they churn out oxygen, which we then breathe. So the carbon dioxide and oxygen cycle are absolutely necessary to sustain and grow life on Earth. And what's fascinating to me, Nico, is that what we ought to be talking about is the dangers in global cooling, because a slight shift in global cooling will actually bring in all kinds of potential catastrophic influences on the Earth. You're going to see a significant reduction in growth seasons. You're going to see a significant reduction in arable soils, which means soils that can be used to grow plants and grow vegetables, et cetera. And so, but nobody cares about that because that would actually be real science. Let's talk about global warming. Let's talk about the melting of the ice caps, and all that water is going to go.
And the turtles, don't forget the turtles.
all that water is going to go to these
turtles, the penguins.
To these seafaring towns where all these billionaires go to build mansions because they're concerned about climate change. Oh, wait. So the inconsistencies here are unbelievable. The science is shitty but this is about control. And I can tell you right now, there is a great coordinated effort.
I was just going to bring that. I'm so glad you brought that up.
But we can't. We
Because
gotta
none
just
of this
give
happens if the media doesn't pick this up and run because they have marching orders. When you look at a coordinated messaging, this is campaign marketing 101. It's like they're really campaigning for office, not just figuratively, but literally. They're pushing a campaign forward. When every news media outlet, when you're not allowed to have an opposing side, when they're all having the same talking points, when you can't have a quote-unquote expert contradict another expert. I mean, I'm living in a world where you'll get 10 experts and all come up with different opinions. So just because someone's an expert doesn't mean they're right. I don't know what that means. I mean, there's different ways to qualify an expert, but there's skill, knowledge, education, experience, and training are the qualifications for experts under rules of evidence. But in reality too. So when you're look at what I'm going to go back to COVID because that was the experiment.
Right.
If and I said this
Same
a long
concept.
time ago. If people weren't censored during the COVID insanity,
Absolutely.
we wouldn't gone through all the bullshit. We really wouldn't have, because someone would have talked about ivermectin. Somebody would have talked about vitamin D3 and zinc. Someone would have talked about 6-foot rule. Where the hell did you get this from? There's no science behind that. Someone would have talked the difference between a viral molecule and a bacterial molecule and why a little piece of
Natural
cloth or a
immunity.
diaper over your face doesn't stop it. Someone would have talked about natural immunity. Someone would have talked about herd immunity the right way, not just the way that they wanted to do. I mean, all this would have done differently. Even hydroxychloroquine for a while, that was people were afraid to talk about that. People would have said differently, sunlight, whatever it was, and who the really cohorts were that were at risk and danger and the different comorbidities that you needed to have. And those are the people and the actual numbers. And then the jab and whether it was this and whether it was effective or not. And the studies or lack of their studies and the VAERS, the vaccine adverse events. I'm just touching the surface. That was the same
That's right.
mode.
And it didn't matter.
The truth didn't matter.
Because it was about what? The lockdown policies were about controlling your consumption
100%.
and controlling your movement. That's what this is about. The government is in control of everything, and you become a subject. There is no citizenry. That's over. We get to determine how you think and what you do in response to
What
this,
you put in
that
your
thinking.
body, how you treat your
All
kid.
of this is very well coordinated. Look, a couple of weeks after Biden had taken office, H.R. 794 was a House bill put forward that basically declared the climate crisis the most significant threat to the nation that we needed to address. And the House bill was put forward. This was literally 2 weeks after Biden took office. If you fast forward to February of 2022, there were 1,140 organizations, not surprisingly, virtually all of them with the word diversity and democracy in their title, wrote a letter to Biden begging him to declare a climate emergency. So we have a House bill in 2021, 2 weeks after, saying, please declare a climate emergency. 1,140 organizations in February of 22 and a letter to Biden saying, please declare a climate emergency. 8 months later, you got a Senate bill put forward by Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts saying, this is the most important thing we ought to be doing. Please declare a climate emergency. This is a drumbeat. You can hear it. The World Economic Forum, same thing.
Yeah.
United Nations, same thing.
Yep.
All of them are saying what? Declare a climate emergency, suspend constitutional liberties, so that you basically get, without any legal restraint, you basically get to decide how you're going to conquer a fake problem. That's the pretext. It's a serious problem. So now we have a fake president trying to address a fake problem to hurt very real people. And we got to step back and we got to push back on this shit and say, your science is not only shitty, but your track record, your COVID concept is brilliant. Your track record's shitty. You want to control me. I'm not going to let you do that. The Constitution still applies. And why do they do this? Because people have never been more ignorant.
Yeah.
And you've got two generations that have been fomented with this fear. You're going to kill the earth. You're going to kill the earth. Oh my gosh, climate change. And the reality is we're going to end up killing ourselves, because who's producing carbon dioxide? We are. And so you need less people. This is where the depopulation comes from. You need less people because people are just a pain in the ass. Just breathe too much bad shit. So let's kill them off.
Yeah, but how does it figure in then? A corporation like Walmart says they're going to be part of the move to put 500,000 charging stations all across America, some in their parking lot. If the end result is less people, who's going to be shopping at Walmart? And who
You
is
actually
driving
think
their...
that they're thinking about that?
I don't know.
You really are
That's-
giving them too much
it's-
credit.
Did you
Who's
see the
driving
Candace
their-
Owens interview on the Breakfast Club?
I saw some
Well,
of
she
it.
stumped
Who's this, who?
Candace on the Breakfast Club.
Oh, yeah, no.
Well, one thing she said, and she stumped them. She said, "There's a fund in the government to they're funding several movies in the United States." And Charlamagne asked why. He says, "Well, there's some ideologies they need to get across." So right there, where they're live interviewing her, he does a research, and the guy goes like, "Oh wow, they are," and they start naming the movies. And and Candace says, "Yeah, it's because the government decided to see how can we get this idea across." Now, 3 weeks ago, I'm trying to remember the movie, but there's this movie. To what George was saying, there's this movie. The government is having some meetings, telling everybody the more we're breathing in, the way we're not completely regulating what we're consuming, we're contaminating each other. And that's the movie. He says the way we're breathing, and because what we're eating, we're contaminating each other. We're contaminating the air, and our next generation. So what they did, they made this underground bunker that people are going to go there because this particular world was going to cease to exist, and you were going to be safe. And as I was listening to George, I was like, "Yeah,
This is the movie.
Yeah,
But you have to ask yourself, why would the government be making movies, and what message and
that's
controlling?
culture.
Yeah,
Culture.
they understand the battlefield.
Yeah.
and the culture, and they're trying to plant seeds. I mean, look from Disney to movies to Hollywood, and then you combine that with ignorance. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but just not knowing and ignorance to that thing. Then you have people that are easily manipulated, and you have that's why you have this fake ideology, and people fall for it because you think to yourself, in the 80s, George talked about the 80s before. In the 80s, there were more free thinkers. People said, "What?" I mean, people were laughing. You had the Jeffersons, you had Red Fox, you had Sanford and Son, you had Don Rickles, you had Archie Bunker. I mean, people were laughing. They were laughing at the stuff that we got
At
wrong in the past.
stereotypes, right.
We have to
Right.
laugh. I love stereotypes. I
Yeah.
think they're funny.
They are.
I mean, Mexican stereotype, Lebanese, black, white, whatever. It's just funny. Jewish. We should be able to laugh at that and celebrate culture and laugh at stereotypes. The Greek ones, a big fat Greek wedding. I mean, I saw. I mean, and just this false narrative and these movies and this narrative that's been put out by the government, supported by Hollywood, I think is a legitimate concern people have. Look, I saw a clip the other day of this guy was being sarcastic. He's kind of eating a meal, and I'm really gonna bastardize this and get it wrong because that's amazing how changing the cover of a pancake box saved lives. Isn't that kind of interesting? And he keeps eating. He's pointing out all the bullshit, Aunt Jemima with the syrup. And Uncle Ben's, and all this bullshit.
Success stories.
I mean, these are all. What net gain did that do for anybody? I mean, how did that bring people together? Changing the Redskins to whatever the hell they changed that bullshit to. I mean, I have a buddy of mine who's a Redskins fan. He's like, you just destroyed him. I mean, but we've lost our minds on all this stuff. And then, to me, what is the net gain? Back to the climate control. Back to the COVID analysis. Back to anything that we do in this country. We're thinking about sounding good, not doing good. One thing may sound good, but does it do good? And then we've really lost focus on doing good. And then we've bastardized the definition of a good is anyway. And so that makes the conversation even more difficult.
And this is being articulated in glaring terms, and we're just sort of, again, just sort of ignoring it at our peril. Bill Gates, who has, by the way, boatloads of climate-related businesses, so he stands to gain quite a bit. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
It's the same style of working.
He had a blog post where he wrote in 2022, and he said, quote, "We need to revolutionize the entire physical economy, how we make things, how we move around, how we produce electricity, how we grow food, how we stay warm and cool in less than 3 decades." And so how's that going to happen? How it's going to happen is they literally have to lock people down and force the changes that they want, which will be absolutely detrimental. And so I went to the University College of London economics professor. I follow this lady because she just gets more and more insane every year, and I just sit back and watch the train wreck. In October of 2020, in the middle of the COVID nonsense, hysteria, she chairs an economics council for the World Health Organization, and she wrote a piece basically saying that the COVID lockdown model should be adopted to a climate lockdown model. And so she wrote, quote, "In the near future, the world may need to resort to lockdowns again, this time to tackle a climate emergency. Under a climate lockdown," she calls it, "governments would limit private vehicle use, ban consumption of red meat, and impose extreme energy-saving measures while fossil fuel companies would have to stop drilling. Quote unquote, basically, AKA, you're going to stop moving and you're going to do what we tell you to do. End of story.
Did Nico write the red meat part?
Sounds like Texans are not going to be able to follow those rules.
Nico.
So
What are you talking about? What did I miss?
it's a banning on red meat. So he's saying,
wow.
did you write that part?
Oh, got it. No. You can even write me all you want. Here's the deal with this. But think about this. We have data now. When you look at these cold freezes, since they don't want the world to be heated, then we're going to get colder again. I mean, electric vehicles, solar systems, they don't hold up.
No, they don't.
They don't hold up.
They
number
freeze
one,
up.
they don't hold up. We already have already improved our climate emissions. The United States, again, China hasn't. You know, Egypt hasn't. India hasn't, or whatever. Not Egypt. Sorry, India. I mean, India hasn't. I mean, but yet we do. So all of it falls on us. So the number one, there's a false narrative. There's a false take responsibility, and there's a false and there's a huge consequence to us. I mean, it makes us weaker. It shifts resources and power to other countries. And we're subjecting ourselves to not being the world power again. I mean, it's all about a shift of power and distributing power more evenly. Because when you have a selective implementation of a principle that you think is an existential threat, but you don't apply it to everybody, well, then you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, I'm going to call bullshit on that one. Wait a minute, this is something that's it's an existential. It's not like there's a tsunami coming in. And it's like, but you people on that side of the beach, you don't have to worry about it. No, bullshit. The tsunami's coming for the whole beach. That's the narrative that they're setting aside. Well, then why wouldn't you respond appropriately and hold everybody accountable? But the answer is they're not wanting to. This is because it's being used and it's a false narrative to shift power, money, resources to make
Sorry
a one world.
Sorry for quoting Andrew Tate, but when they were talking to him about climate change, he said the guy's like trying to explain to him, and he's like, "I'm not listening to you." He says, "What? You don't believe the science? You don't follow the science on this one. You follow the money." He says, "Don't follow the science on this one. Follow the money." He says, trying to explain it scientifically, he says, "You're going to get lost." And I'm like, okay.
They don't have a position if you do it scientifically.
I'd like to upgrade our source from Andrew Tate if I can. There's an excellent piece, and there's a lot of mind-boggling stuff out there, and a lot of it's wrong. But this guy does a great job. His name is Paul Dreesen, and he wrote a piece called Climate and Energy, Fantasy and Tyranny, and he put it up on Town Hall. And he puts so much in this piece, and it's eminently readable. I would strongly recommend you guys are listening and get that piece, read it. But he makes, and this gets back to Jordan Peterson's there's a Jordan Peterson interview that kind of went viral with a young neo-Marxist kid by the name of Destiny.
Oh.
And I like the kid in the sense that he doesn't scream at the sky. He actually engages. He's willing to have you come on, and he'll spew his nonsense, but he'll let you contest him. He'll let you challenge him. And so Peterson comes on. Of course, in Peterson fashion, he doesn't cede any of the nonsense. And Destiny starts the conversation by saying, well, as you know.
His name is Destiny.
I don't know. I actually don't know what his real name is. Maybe, Dom, you can check him out.
Go ahead.
But that's his social media name. And so Peterson doesn't concede the fallacy that somehow it's undeniable that there's a climate crisis afoot. In fact, Peterson says, no, it's eminently deniable. Are you kidding me? And then he goes on and starts giving examples of why it's deniable. But Peterson does a really great job, and he highlights a key problem with the whole sermon on climate crisis, and that is that all of this is predicated on temperatures going up, Karen. Right? It's going up and up and up, and the world's going to blow up at some point. We're literally going to die in a firestorm of our own making. And so Peter brings up this notion that there's something really wrong with the way these temperatures are captured. And people need to know that. There's something fundamentally wrong with how these temperature readings are captured. They fail to take into account something that's called urban heat zones, urban heat bias. What a lot of people don't understand is that the organization responsible for gathering these readings, the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they have placed their weather temperature stations in urban areas where everybody should know this by now, are routinely warmer. Urban areas are routinely warmer than rural areas. Virtually 90%, and I'm being conservative, of the weather stations that are gathering these readings are in urban areas. They're hot. The problem is that if you add up all of the urban areas in the world, it only consumes about 4% of our global landmass. So we're acquiring over 90% of faulty readings from 4% of the global landmass.
That's a big deal.
And it's an area that is specifically warm. And so these
They're skewing the
temperatures
data.
are
They're
what's
skewing the data.
Of course they are. And what's the word? Bullshit. It's utter bullshit. And so Peterson brought that up. I mean, this is why I was texting to Nico. I said, that was such a good point. He was like hauling ass. He didn't have much time. I wish he would have parked there because this is a big problem. And there's more and more research to call bullshit on this. There's a great piece. If you guys are interested, I can ask Dom to put it up there. But it's a piece that was just released in a climate journal. It's a peer-reviewed journal by Willie Soon et al. It's over 37 researchers from 18 different countries, Nico, in the journal Climate. I think it's issue number 11, section 9, posted and published August 28th of 2023. And they bring this issue up, that the IPCC is saying, don't worry about these hot zones because it's only about 10% of our readings. They've called bullshit on it. And they said, no, it's at least 40%. You're 4 times off. Are you kidding me? So, and we're being conservative. It's actually higher.
4 times off, is it being higher, hotter, or not as hot?
The IPCC is saying that we've accounted for these hot zones in our temperature readings. So our hot zones, our temperature readings aren't off. We've accounted for inner cities and densely populated areas because it's only 10% of the readings that we're taking. And the research has shown that it's not. It's 40%
Got it. So it's,
of their readings.
Got it.
And so we're seeing a lot of shoddy science, and it's being used to manipulate people into conduct that will be self-deprecating and self-detrimental. This is very dangerous. And we're only bringing it up, Nico, because we're getting closer and closer to the advent of a climate emergency. It's COVID emergency on steroids. Don't fall for the bullshit.
But you know what? But the interesting thing, Salo's been bringing this up for a while. He's very prone to theories that are
Conspiracy, just say it.
conspiracy. Yes, okay, I'll say it. I was being careful.
Conspiratorialists.
But that there's not going to be an election. Well, I mean, if there was not going to be an election, if that's the theory that some people have, some really intelligent people have, then this would be a hell of a way to accomplish it, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this would be a hell of a way to shut people down again.
Yeah.
I mean, and tie it into something. And not to mention what else is coming. These people need to be prepared. And that's why I think podcasts are so important. I really do. I mean, Bobby Kennedy says that he's done as well as he's done, not because of mainstream media. They've tried to paint him as it's people are not trusting mainstream media, and they're looking to other sources of conversation and information and wanting discourse, whether it's Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, whomever else out there. And there's a lot of other good people that are doing it well. But so that's people need to be aware and need to be informed, and people need to start having conversation. Look, I know we're already at 45 minutes, and we just need to start wrapping it up so people can get back to their families. But I think this is just an example of the importance of your voice. I mean, having conversation, exercising that free speech that we all say that we love so much, and doing it in a way that's I like to say effective. Don't just do it to make yourself feel good because I spoke up. But are you doing things to move the needle? Because in the end, if we don't move the needle, then we all sound great to ourselves as the world continues to go in decline. I mean, the United States, as President Trump said, I mean, I think objectively, you look at the data, you look at different points of reference. It's true. We're in a country in decline, and it's a serious decline. And the thing that I think should be most alarming to people, and when you have conversations with folks that maybe think differently and are intending to vote for these same shitty ideas, is look how quick it's declined. I mean, just in 3.5 years.
And continues
but
to
it's
decline.
incredible. But the only reason why is because the ground had been fertile.
Yeah.
The soil has been fertilized for decades. And then people are quieter. People don't want to be canceled. People are scared. And all that. I'm not saying that those aren't legitimate considerations that people have to contend
The
with.
ideological soil in academia.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. The soil means it's the society soil, yes. I mean, but think in 3.5 years, how much ground has been made and how much ground has been lost, depending on what side you're on. And so if you don't like that, then you've got to do something. You got to be able to say, at least to your kids and grandkids, for me, at least I spoke up. At least I did everything that God put before me. I used every time, talent, all my treasure, whatever I could, and every gift that God gave me and every opportunity the Lord put before me to try to leave this place a little better for you than we found it. I think that we are on the verge of truly leaving this place off worse than we found it, whether it's with climate, whether it's with student debt. I mean, student debt loan forgiveness, that's a bunch of bullshit. That's not absolving anything. That's just passing it on to your grandkids. So the selfishness of people saying, I'm student, no bullshit. Someone's paying for that. It's just not going to be in the immediate now. So you're really leaving your children and your grandchildren worse off. It's that type of mindset.
point.
We're not thinking generationally. For me, my orders come. I'm eternal. My perspective eternal. My mission is generationally. And so we have to start thinking of generation. Our founding fathers thought generationally. They sacrificed, whether you like them or not. Of course, they were not perfect, but the ideas were incredible. And they thought generationally. They thought about their children's children. I think we need to start doing that, because when you think about the trillions and trillions of debt, when you think about an open border, they're not going to have the United States anymore. You might as well tell your kids, here's a bunch of money, move to Costa Rica until they get Costa Rica, or move over here to Belize, or move over here to Portugal, wherever you want to go for now, because it's just a matter of time. If America goes down, and it's a real, I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm not an alarmist, I'm a realist and a pragmatic man, but I mean, it's coming. I mean, it is
We're on
coming.
the
There's
path.
no way we can
Yeah.
keep this up. When people say it's unsustainable, as if we seem to hear that way too much lately, but it's really unsustainable. It's like running a business on a deficit and losing money and losing customers and not checking your inventory and not paying your bills and not paying your employees. You're going to lose the business. I mean, now that's just an analogy. We're going to lose the country. So, and not just economically, not in our standing internationally, but also morally and societally. I think we're losing that. That's why this weekend.
I go back to
again,
Bill Maher making fun of Dennis Prager. When Dennis Prager made the comment of, they're saying men can get pregnant, and then Bill Maher says, "You're stupid. Who's saying that?" Making fun of him, and now that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So it's deteriorating very, very fast.
Very quickly, too quickly. So look, what do we do? Well, for me as a Christian, I pray. I know that the Lord wins in the end, but in this world's going to get tough, and it is tough now. And it's to prepare my kids to toil with society. I mean, that's why I'm
Mess
raw.
with our kids.
That's why I'm real and raw. I love that, by the way. That's why I'm real and raw with my 15-year-old, and I'm starting to fertilize the soil for the 11-year-old, because she's not ready yet for these talks. Michael, the 13-year-old, is on the spectrum of autism, so we have to protect him, and I've trained the other kids for that. Zyther's 8. But so at the right time, we'll get him going. But until then, we build them up. You build them up, and you teach them to think, and you teach them to be dangerous, not just with their thoughts, with their faith, with their hands if they have to be. You teach your children to be formidable, and that's what we have to do. And we have to think about our children, and we have to think about the future, and we have to think about these ideas, and we have to engage in conversations about ideas. And which ideas would be beneficial to us. We have a lot of data. It's not like you have to make it up. You're not pulling shit out of your ass. I mean, we have a lot of data to look at things. We do. And so that's what we have to do. And ultimately, November's coming. Look, it's going to get rough. It's got to get rough in the summer, I mean, right? We're not stupid.
They're losing too much.
I mean, it's
They
too
could
much.
lose too much.
They're losing ground with blacks.
Yeah.
They're losing grounds with Hispanics. They're losing grounds with urban women.
With independents.
With independents.
I mean,
we're
with
losing grounds
with Democrats.
with young
With
people
the
too.
Democrats
With
too.
young males at least.
Yep.
We're losing ground. And so, look, guys, try to persuade people, be educated, talk, be gracious, be professional, be courageous, do all those things. And if you're a person of faith, you pray. And so for all those people, for those that are Christian, I mean, obviously I hope you just really take a moment to celebrate what yesterday meant, what happened yesterday, I mean, historically, because it happened, and what tomorrow means historically and theologically.
The resurrection,
The
of the Savior of the world.
Savior of the world, right? That gives you hope. We have hope in Christ.
Yeah.
Not in this world, not in politics, not in a candidate, not in an individual, but in the Savior of the world, the architect of the universe, the fact that we're all eternal beings and that we're going to spend eternity somewhere. Where are you going to spend eternity? Well, if you put your hope in Christ Jesus in that empty tomb, you know where you're going to spend eternity. So God bless you and your families. Thank you for always joining us, and I hope you'll join us next week.